Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. The bye week is over, and Purdue returns to the field on Saturday to host Notre Dame in a game that suddenly looks a little bit more winnable. I'll preview Saturday's showdown for the Shillelagh on the show today before answering your Purdue football questions ahead of a much-anticipated renewal of an old-time rivalry. Let's get on into it. If you don't already, be sure to follow the show on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. I'll be live tweeting from the press box all game. Be sure you come join the conversation there. And you can always send over your questions for the show there on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. Or you can email the show boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. And be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss a thing. The show is available wherever you get podcasts. Purdue versus Notre Dame, Saturday, a 3:30 p.m. kickoff from Ross-Ade Stadium. It's a CBS broadcast. It got me wondering, when's the last time Purdue had a game broadcasted by CBS? If you guessed the 2004 Sun Bowl, you would be correct. The 2004 Sun Bowl against Arizona State was the last time Purdue played on CBS. It will do so again. Brad Nessler, Gary Danielson, a member of the Cradle of Quarterbacks, and Jenny Dell will be on the broadcast. This line opened up last week with Purdue as 16.5-point underdogs. That quickly came down to 11 after Notre Dame's loss to Northern Illinois. A shocker that we will get to here momentarily. That came down to 11. I saw it at 12.5. I checked a couple hours ago, recording this 7:30 Tuesday night. Last I saw, Notre Dame favored by 10. That was on DraftKings with a total of 45. I'm sure it'll fluctuate a little bit over the next day or two before kickoff, but that's what it's looking like right now. So, this has certainly moved in Purdue's favor after the unthinkable happened in South Bend last week. And it just goes to show you, this sport, there's no other sport like it, where the perception can just change so much from week to week. Because after week one, things looked great for Notre Dame. A 23-13 win at Texas A&M, a very impressive performance in a very hostile environment. Say what you want about Texas A&M, the reputation of underachieving there, but that's a tough place to play. A&M had less than 250 yards of offense in that game. When you looked at the schedule after that, Notre Dame was going to be favored and probably still will be favored in every game it plays the rest of the way. Maybe not against USC now, but Notre Dame looked like it had the easiest path to the playoff of anyone in America. And then as a 28-point favorite, Notre Dame loses outright to Northern Illinois on Saturday. It came out of nowhere. This is stuff that only can happen in college football. 16-14, the final score. And the alarming part for Notre Dame is that it was only 14 points against a MAC team, kind of continuing a multiple-year criticism of the Irish when it comes to offense. The passing game for Notre Dame, kind of getting into the breakdown here of what you can expect. The passing game is a big question mark for Notre Dame. Even in that win over Texas A&M, Riley Leonard was 18 for 30 for 158 yards. 5.3 yards per attempt, not great. Against Northern Illinois, you lose the game, 5.1 yards per attempt, 2 interceptions in that game. That's not quarterback play you can win because of, and it's quarterback play that you need a good run game and a really good defense to win with. I think Notre Dame has that, but you have little margin for error then. He's not a great downfield passer. For those who don't know, Riley Leonard came from Duke, where he was a multi-year starter, and he was never a downfield passer there. That was never the strength of his game. He's a veteran, experienced quarterback who's had some good and bad passing, but he moves really well. That's his strength. In the pass game, though, this is a questionable receiving core, too. It's been, again, a common theme. Notre Dame's had some very good tight ends over time. Michael Mayer, Cole Kmet, Bears bias there. Kyle Rudolph, if we're going way back. I know there have been more that just aren't coming to mind here, but the wide receiver play, it's been a little bit. There's no Will Fuller on this year's team. This is, Bo Collins, a guy who underachieved at Clemson. Jaden Greathouse, a young guy who came in with high expectations. It's not a great passing game for Notre Dame. It's a big question. But Notre Dame does run the ball pretty well. And as I said, Riley Leonard is a very big part of that. He is very effective with his feet. He carried the ball a ton against Texas A&M and did so for about 6 yards per carry. Jeremiah Love is a good running back. He does a nice job for them. They run behind a good offensive line, but not one that lives up to the recent standards of what Notre Dame has had. Notre Dame lost both their tackles to the NFL after last season, including an old friend of Purdue's, Blake Fisher. If you know, you know. Then this year, Notre Dame lost its left tackle in fall camp. And that kind of put Notre Dame in a bind because you're replacing two key guys. The guy you had, Charles Jagasaw, or I think is his name, was supposed to be the guy. He's out, and Notre Dame is not a program that can reload out of the transfer portal as much as some other schools. The academic restrictions at Notre Dame are real. So it does question their depth a little bit. It's an inexperienced offensive line. It is not as dominant of a unit as we're used to seeing at Notre Dame. They want to run it. They want to use short passing game stuff. You're not going to see Notre Dame launching the ball downfield. This is not a Brady Quinn Notre Dame offense. If you can put them in must-pass downs, that's huge. If you let them stay ahead of the chains and move the ball just piece by piece by piece and get 4 yards at a time, then they're going to slow bleed you, and it's going to be a rough day. I think this is the type of offense that Ryan Walters' defense should do pretty well against if he has the personnel to operate it. If you can slow down that run game, and yes, I know the quarterback run game has been an area that can exploit what Ryan Walters has done at Purdue. But if you can stop the run with 6 or 5 even, and then you can drop all that back, Notre Dame's not going to be able to beat you. Notre Dame's not going to be able to move the ball on you. But last year, Purdue didn't remotely have the personnel that it takes to execute what Ryan Walters wanted to do. Does it this year? We'll find out on Saturday, or we'll at least get a much better idea of what Purdue has on the defensive side on Saturday. And on the other side of the ball, when Purdue's on offense, what gets really interesting, Notre Dame's secondary is legitimately elite. Benjamin Morrison, great corner, going to be a first-round draft pick. Christian Gray on the other side, another very good corner. Xavier Watts, great at safety. This defensive backfield is high level. It is a top 5 defensive backfield in the country. It's right up there with Ohio State, with Georgia. It's lockdown. When you look at what's happened so far, Texas A&M did nothing through the air. And almost half of Northern Illinois' pass yardage came on one play. 83-yard touchdown pass, but it was like 15 air yards tops. It was a busted coverage downfield when a guy missed a tackle and they had a hole. So it's not been a defense that teams have had much success throwing against. Now, you can also flip that and say Connor Wegman looked pretty underwhelming, And Northern Illinois is a MAC team. It's probably not going to have tons of success throwing against a really good secondary. But what Northern Illinois did was run the ball effectively enough to not need to throw it a ton. Northern Illinois had 45 rushing attempts to just 20 pass attempts. That's not Indiana State stuff, but it's running the ball quite a bit. Notre Dame's defensive line is good. It's a good front seven. It's an overall great defense. But the strength of the defense is that back end. And it's not like Northern Illinois was really moving the ball tremendously well. It did. It outgained Notre Dame, but only 16 points. What Notre Dame's defense is going to be designed to do is very similar to what it forced Purdue to do in 2021 when Purdue went up there. And you'd see several times when Jack Plummer was in that game for Purdue, Purdue got the ball across midfield, Purdue got the ball around the 40, the 35, and it stalled out. Because Purdue couldn't, when that field condensed, just like the Big Ten championship game against Michigan, an elite defense. When that field condensed, Purdue was settling for field goals. I wouldn't expect Purdue to take an approach where it's running the ball 45 out of 65 plays. That's not going to be Purdue. It shouldn't be. But I do think you'll see some run-adjacent stuff in the passing game early on. Screens, quick dump-offs, get the ball out. Don't throw deep into that secondary all the time. You'll have to. You're not going to be able to win this game without taking a shot here and there, but I don't think you're going to drop back and throw balls across the middle of the field on a deep post over and over again like you maybe would do against Indiana State. You've got to pick and choose your battles a little bit here. You know, a thought here in terms of injuries, Nyland Green and CJ Smith are the big questions here for Purdue. If Nyland Green can't go, it's going to be true freshman Teron Grant starting at corner again. I would fully expect Notre Dame to challenge Grant a ton if he is out there. Yes, he is a very talented player, and yes, the future is incredibly bright for him. But Mike Denbrock at Notre Dame is a very good offensive coordinator. I don't know how good his talent is this year that he has to work with, but he's a really good OC. I would expect him to take a lot of shots at Teron Grant if he's out there. And look, Ryan Walters talked in his press conference this week. He was not optimistic that either Green or Smith would go in this one. If Green does, I would certainly expect that Notre Dame does try to take some shots at him and get him going downfield to see how healthy that foot really is. On the flip side with CJ Smith, all I hear is how fast he is. That's been the big, that was the big early takeaway from him. If you can get him out there and you can let him, go down there to see if he can get past the defense, it doesn't hurt anything. If you got a burner, see if you can use them. Hamstrings are tricky, so I don't know. Ryan Walters did not sound optimistic. That's kind of always your worry about training camp injuries, is those things never seem to heal as quickly as one would hope. But neither of them listed on the depth chart this week. That probably tells you a lot. We'll see what happens on Saturday, 2 hours before the game when that availability report comes out. On the bright side, Corey Stewart is back at left tackle. That is great news for Purdue. He is supposed to be the left tackle on this offense that can make a difference. You got Joe Anderson back on the defensive line as well. So you're at full strength on the defensive line. And Cam Brown, the UCLA transfer, returns to the wide receiver rotation. On the Notre Dame side of things, there is a significant piece of injury news. Word came out earlier today that Riley Leonard hurt his left shoulder, his non-throwing shoulder, in the game against Northern Illinois. Look, it doesn't impact his ability to throw. really. I mean, if he has some pain there, I guess it throws everything off. But what's very significant about that is that he runs quite a bit, and you don't want him getting hit if he has an injury already. I didn't see a ton of that Notre Dame game, but it sounded like he did not run the ball a whole lot in the second half. If that's the case, and you have him back there where he is not running at full strength, that's a big win for Purdue. Then you do start to wonder, does Steve Angeli play, the backup quarterback? Do they go to one of their talented young guys like CJ Carr? I doubt it. But you wonder about that, because if he's limited, his skill set is already slightly limited. Look, some final thoughts on this one before I make my pick. A week ago, no one would have given Purdue much of a chance here. And to be honest, myself included. I would have said Purdue had a chance, but I don't know how good I would have felt about it. Now there's real optimism here. You've seen Notre Dame go down. You've seen some of the vulnerabilities get exploited. What that says about Texas A&M? Not great. But the truth about Notre Dame is probably in the middle. Notre Dame clearly is not as good as we thought after week 1. When Notre Dame was 5th in the AP poll, Notre Dame's not a top 5 team in the country. Probably knew that at the time. I mean, probably top 15, probably top 10, maybe. But there are vulnerabilities there. This is not an Ohio State level roster that doesn't have many flaws. This can go one of two ways. This is not, right, or Marcus Freeman said it in his press conference. Notre Dame's been there before. Notre Dame lost to Marshall a couple years ago. I don't know that was the most savvy thing to say by Marcus Freeman, but he is right. It's a gut check time. Notre Dame can either come out and play really well, play laser focused, and take care of business in this thing, or Notre Dame can look rattled, look like a panicked team. And at that point, all bets are off. I still think if Notre Dame plays its A game, I don't know that Purdue can win this game. But is that going to happen? I think for fans, it's great that this series is back for a limited time. Probably not so much for Ryan Walters and Purdue. A lot of people are going to be very excited for this game, and I fully understand it. I grew up an hour away from Notre Dame Stadium when this series was played every year. I fully get it. I grew up a Purdue fan in a school full of Notre Dame kids. Well, Notre Dame fans. Not a single one of them went to Notre Dame, but that's how it goes. This is something that fans have really been waiting for. Ryan Walters kind of made it clear last week on his coach's show that he is not thrilled about the difficulty of Purdue's schedule. I don't think we'll be seeing this series get renewed past what's on the calendar already. One note I saw in Purdue's game notes, this would just be the second time since 2007 that Purdue has started 2-0 if it wins this week. That's a rough stat. That's a really rough stat. 2021 is the year in that time frame that Purdue did start 2-0. It beat Oregon State and it beat UConn. That's not great. Just because Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois last week should not change the fact that Purdue has to come out in this thing underdog mentality, take a shot here and there, play with your hair on fire, nothing to lose. If you're going to come out ultra-conservative, you're probably not going to out-conservative Notre Dame. Notre Dame has the better players for a conservative style game. You got to come out and let it loose. See what happens. Don't be reckless. Don't throw this thing away in the first half because you take 3 shots in a quadruple coverage. But go out there and see what happens. Don't bank on winning this thing 13-10. Look, my prediction is going to be 24-17 Notre Dame. I do see this as a lower scoring game. I want to see Purdue's offense do it against a good defense. I want to see Hudson Card go pick apart a good secondary, a really good secondary. I want to see Purdue's receivers be difference makers. I want to see that Purdue's offensive line can live up to the billing, that this is one of the better offensive lines in recent memory, that Purdue can run the ball a little bit on this defense. Prove me wrong, Purdue. It would not shock me if Purdue wins this game. It would not at all. But these physical battles are not ones that Purdue has been well equipped to win here in recent years. We'll see if that changes on Saturday. And as they say, there's no better time than the present, because this would be a career-altering win for Ryan Walters, and it would be the biggest win for Purdue, probably since 2018 when it beat Ohio State. After the break, Q&A time. September means a lot of things. We have the return of football. We have pumpkin-scented candles. The leaves are beginning to fall, and the weather is starting to turn. It's also Life Insurance Awareness Month. As an agent with Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance, my biggest passion is ensuring that my clients have the proper amounts and types of life insurance. Give me a call at 317-846-5861 or email me at jordan.jones@infarmbureau.com. Let's make sure your family and your world is properly protected. I wanted to start the Q&A with kind of a flashback to last week. We had someone ask if covering the spread would be a moral victory of sorts. I mean, now that it's down to 10, that's a lot different than when it was 16.5. It just depends how it happens. If Purdue's down like 28-10 and it scores a couple touchdowns and it's 31-24 final, I don't know that that's as much of a moral victory. But if you're in this thing till the end and it's a 3-point game with 5 minutes to go and Notre Dame scores a touchdown and you throw a pick trying to make something happen and it gets toused, that's entirely different. I think what would be a moral victory of sorts is if this thing is competitive deep into the fourth quarter. You can walk away with your head held high after that. I don't think it all comes down to the point spread. Is there a position that Purdue is better than Notre Dame at on paper? Look, I don't want to be overreactionary to last week, but quarterback is a real conversation. Hudson Card obviously looked great against Indiana State, and that was a weak opponent. Riley Leonard's limited, though. And we knew that coming into this season. We knew that, absolutely. I think that's an interesting conversation. And then for this week, especially if Riley Leonard is banged up and is not able to utilize his legs as well as he normally might. Wide receiver is probably an interesting debate. I don't know that Notre Dame has a bunch of difference makers there, but defensively, definitely not. Notre Dame, I mean, all three levels of the defense is better than Purdue. So that's kind of where I would fall. Quarterback and wide receiver are your best bets. Is this the biggest game in Ryan Walters' tenure at Purdue thus far? Yeah, I mean, look, last year didn't really present itself many big games. The season opener against Fresno State was big because it's his first game. Chance to make a good first impression. Didn't go his way, but I mean, after that, look, that season kind of fell apart quick. Purdue was 1-3 real fast, and we knew where it was headed. Indiana, I guess, always is big. But no, I mean, this is a top 5 team at home in a classic rivalry that means a lot to your fans. And I guess not a top 5 team anymore, but it's a big game. Absolutely. It's Notre Dame. It's a historic brand. The range of outcomes here is pretty vast. And I'll say that about this game. This is why I think if you're Purdue, you don't love this type of game being on the schedule. If you win this, it's cloud nine for Purdue fans, and it's awesome. That's an all-time win. That's something you write in the lore of Ross-Ade Stadium. You lose close, and you're seeing real progress from last year to this, and that's good. That's what you want to see. That's the biggest part of this season. But if you lose big, fans are going to be pretty upset, and I get it. It's not a team that you want to lose big to, but that's kind of where this is tricky. It is tricky, but yeah, biggest game, massive opportunity for sure. Should Purdue fair catch every kickoff? No, I don't know about that. I mean, if you're 8 yards deep in the end zone, yeah, don't take it out. Don't do that. But if you have a chance to make a play, take it. I mean, what's the worst we're talking here? 5 yards different in field position? 10 yards if it goes really poorly? See what happens. Again, you're not going to win this game from being just ultra conservative and sitting on the ball and not trying to do much. You're going to have to try to make plays somewhere. With Notre Dame losing last weekend and not showing a lot of offense, what do you think Purdue should do to keep the Notre Dame offense in check? Look, I think you have to stop the run. I think you have to sell out for it a little bit. I would expect Purdue to play Antonio Stevens in the box most of the game alongside Kydron Jenkins, so you have a 7-man box basically with the 5 guys on the line of scrimmage and then two linebackers more or less with Thieneman as a deep safety. I think you have to do it. You have to make Notre Dame throw the ball on you. You just have to. If that's how you lose, then so be it. But don't go down in this game from letting Notre Dame just slow bleed this thing and running for 225 on the ground for 5 yards a carry. You can't let that happen. Do you see Purdue's offensive line being able to control the line of scrimmage like Northern Illinois did to Notre Dame's defensive line? We're going to learn a lot about about Purdue's offensive line in this game. It's back to full strength with Corey Stewart returning after missing the opener. It's supposed to be Purdue's best offensive line in a while, but is it? We got to see it. Indiana State, it looked fine. I don't think the offensive line looked anything special in that game, but hard to make judgments off of that game. It's a big task to neutralize Notre Dame's defensive line, but why not? I mean, Purdue's waited a long time to have an offensive line that can do that. And then this last question, I'm excited to answer. It's the last one that came in on Twitter today. Do you think Notre Dame considers this a rivalry? Not trying to be snarky, genuine question. I think Purdue does, but I don't get the same vibe from Notre Dame. That's a great question. And that's one that I am fascinated by about this rivalry. Because as I said last week, there are tons of people in both fan bases who know this to be a rivalry. Tons of people who grew up in the state of Indiana when Purdue and Notre Dame played every year for like 70 years. And some of the biggest moments in Purdue history are wins over Notre Dame. Some of the most iconic memories that people have are Purdue beating Notre Dame. But after a decade hiatus of this series, and sure, they played 2021 and all of that, I don't know that this rivalry is as much of a rivalry anymore. And that's okay. Look, Notre Dame's regional rivalries have gone away over the past decade. And that's a 2-factor deal. Yes, Notre Dame's ACC affiliation, where it has to play 6 ACC games a year or whatever, is a big part of that. But so is the Big Ten moving to 9 conference games. That's a big part of this too. I remember when Notre Dame would play Purdue, Michigan, and Michigan State every year. That's no longer the case. And that's okay. Change happens in the sport. And I know part of the appeal of playing Notre Dame for a while was the quote-unquote visibility. You're on NBC when you play up there, and you're going to get national TV when they come to West Lafayette because it's Notre Dame. It hasn't negatively impacted Purdue in the slightest way. It hasn't made a difference. It's a fun historic rivalry. I think it's fun for the fans that it's happening, but by no means do I think this game needs to happen every year. I don't think it does. I don't know that Purdue's locker room views this the way it used to either. I don't know how it could. I mean, this game only once has this game been played since the Obama administration. Purdue hasn't won since the Bush administration. I mean, some of these players were barely born. They weren't walking the last time Purdue beat Notre Dame. And I don't say that to be like a slam on Purdue. It's just a reality of where Purdue football was when this series was last played and how long it's been since it happened. I mean, the last time Purdue won, Danny Hope hadn't even been named the coach in waiting yet. Purdue's had 4 different permanent head coaches since that 2007 win over Notre Dame. If you went around Ross-Ade Stadium on Saturday and found people under the age of 30, ask them what trophy Purdue and Notre Dame play for. I wonder what percentage would know. Now, I assume most people listening to this would know. If you care enough about Purdue football to listen to a guy ramble for almost 32 minutes now about it, you're probably dialed in and know that it's the Shillelagh Trophy. But I think most people know the Old Oaken Bucket. I bet more people know about the Cannon than know about the Shillelagh. It hasn't been played for in a while. This is still a rivalry in some sense, that there's a lot of history there. But, I mean, I don't think you're going to be seeing it getting chippy like you would an Old Oaken Bucket game or something. That's a fun question. I like that. And with Notre Dame, look, I know a ton of Notre Dame fans. Rivalries are different there. They have USC, which is the weirdest rivalry in the world to me. I will never understand. But like, you have this hatred of Miami that goes back to the 80s for people who remember that. But, I mean, they don't play anymore. They have trophies with Boston College and Michigan State and I think Stanford. They don't play those teams anymore. It's just different. It's a very different program, and Notre Dame is remarkably unique, and that's okay. It's part of what makes college football special. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't think Notre Dame views it the same, but I don't think Purdue does either. A few things I'm watching this week here on the way out. Just future opponent watch here. Does Wisconsin even have a pulse against Alabama? Another poor performance for Wisconsin last week. Underwhelming win over South Dakota. They're over a 2-touchdown underdog at home against Bama. I want to see if they even compete, because this could be the most winnable Purdue-Wisconsin game in some time. Elsewhere in the Big Ten, the Apple Cup involves a Big Ten team for the first time. Yes, Washington taking on Wazoo. And then in that part of the country, too, it's not called the Civil War anymore. That got canceled. But Oregon and Oregon State squaring off on Saturday. Both of these future opponents, Oregon has not looked good early on, but it's still a really good roster. Meanwhile, Purdue heads to Corvallis next week, getting Oregon State. And then Indiana going out to UCLA. IU's off to a good start, albeit not the best competition. They dominated my brother-in-law's alma mater last week with a big win over Western Illinois. But if Indiana wins this, look, the bowl hopes look very good. Indiana's probably going to a bowl if it wins this. So a big opportunity there. But that's all I have for this week. I appreciate you all spending your time with me previewing this game between Purdue and Notre Dame. Going to be a fun one on Saturday. I'm looking forward to it. Safe travels to all of you who are headed to campus for the game. And for those of you who are watching on TV, enjoy. Come hang out with me during the game on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. I don't know if you'll have the signal to do so if you're in the stadium, but if not, come tweet at me. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss the post-game podcast on Sunday. Until then, guys, enjoy the game. I'll talk to you then, and take care.